My name is Daniel Cross, and today I want to tell you my story of how my own family turned my retirement celebration into the day they betrayed me. At my retirement party, I was served divorce papers, and my children already knew about her illicit relationship. But what I did afterward shocked everyone. I'm in my early 60s now, but for nearly 3 decades I served as Chief Financial Officer at Northgate Manufacturing, one of the biggest manufacturing firms in Brookford. Those years were a blur of spreadsheets, calculated risks, and financial decisions worth millions. But my real drive wasn't money. It was my family. Evelyn, my wife, and our 2 children, Nathan and Sophia, were at the center of every choice I made. When Nathan wanted a graduate degree at Riverfield University, I covered the substantial tuition fee without blinking. When Sophia dreamed of launching her own fashion store in the Harborview district, I financed the large startup investment myself. For Evelyn, there was never a spending limit. Luxury vacations, a luxury sedan every year, and eventually, the dream house in Fairpoint. At work, colleagues nicknamed me the quiet strategist for my calm, methodical approach. But as retirement drew near, something shifted at home. Evelyn became guarded, always whispering into her phone, cutting conversations short when I entered the room. Nathan and Sophia began asking unusual questions about my investments, inheritance, and what would happen in the future. When my retirement day finally arrived, we kept it small, a backyard gathering with close friends and family. I felt genuinely happy, thinking about the road trips Evelyn and I had planned in our new RV, maybe winters in Sunridge State someday. But midway through the party, everything shattered. Evelyn approached with a tight smile and a large envelope. "Daniel," she said, voice colder than a Brookford blizzard, "I have a retirement gift for you." Inside were divorce papers, irreconcilable differences, division of assets, modest monthly alimony. She leaned in and whispered, "I'm not spending my life looking after an old retiree. You understand, don't you?" I glanced at our guests and noticed a man I didn't know leaning by the gate smirking. My children stood nearby, exchanging knowing looks. "You knew?" I asked. Nathan shrugged. "Dad, you have to see it from our side. Mom deserves happiness, and we have to think ahead." Sophia nodded, adding, "Your investments, the company, maybe it's better in hands that know what to do." In that instant, I understood. This wasn't about Evelyn's happiness. It was about my money. They thought my age made me easy prey, that I'd quietly hand over everything and maybe disappear from their lives in a few years. They had no idea I was still the same strategist who had outmaneuvered entire markets. I slid the papers into my pocket and said only, "All right, I'll sign." The celebration went on, but I was already elsewhere in my mind. Evelyn laughed with the stranger by the gate. My children whispered, probably dividing what they thought they'd soon inherit. They didn't know that for several years I'd been moving my real wealth, offshore accounts, investments under different names, stakes in companies they'd never heard of. 3 days later, I signed exactly what Westvale state law required. Evelyn got the house, half our visible accounts, the standard alimony. Nathan and Sophia received a few stocks and access to a small fund I'd set up years earlier. They thought they'd struck gold. In reality, they'd just lost the game. The next day I vanished, not from the world, but from theirs. I shut down my phone, deleted my social media, and retreated to a secluded property in Clearwater State outside Silverpine, 10 acres of pure quiet, no neighbors, no questions. Calls poured into my old phone at first, Evelyn wanting alimony clarifications, Nathan asking about company accounts, Sophia accusing me of being unfair, but I ignored every message. Seasons rolled by without a word. Alone in that cabin, I began rebuilding myself. I set up a trading desk with 3 monitors, satellite internet, and every tool I needed. Day trading, studying emerging markets, funding tech startups. My edge was clear. After nearly 3 decades reading balance sheets, I knew how to spot gold and avoid trash. Within 6 months, my portfolio had doubled. By the end of the year, it had tripled. While the cryptocurrency craze was sweeping through the market and destroying amateur traders who chased get-rich-quick tokens, I focused on companies in the blockchain sector with real products and solid leadership. My discipline kept me out of the traps that swallowed so many others. But this chapter of my life wasn't just about building wealth. I was rebuilding myself. Each morning started with strength training, followed by long hikes through the quiet trails of Clearwater State. I shifted to balanced meals, cut the corporate dress code from my life, and let my beard grow. I bought clothes that actually fit my taste for the first time in decades. I even picked up the guitar, something I had put off since my 20s. It was during one of those walks that I met Clara. She owned a small bookstore in Silver Pine, a woman in her early 50s with silver hair and a smile that seemed to open every locked door in the room. Divorced, no children, and a love for life that felt completely unforced. Our first conversation stretched into 3 hours, touching on books, travel, and dreams we had both tucked away for years. On our third date, she looked at me and said, "You carry the energy of someone who's been through a storm and learned how to sink, and taller because of it." She wasn't wrong. 8 months later, Clara and I exchanged vows in a tiny courthouse ceremony in Silver Pine. No big crowd, no spectacle, just us, 2 witnesses, and the quiet certainty that we had found something genuine. Half a year later, we adopted Emma, a bright-eyed girl around 9 years old whose biological parents had lost custody due to neglect. Watching Clara care for her, and seeing Emma's trust grow into pure love, revealed what I had been missing in Brookford, but also what I had gained by walking away. Meanwhile, my investments kept snowballing. 2 startups I backed were bought by major tech firms in Lakeshore City. Monthly dividends from my stocks now exceeded what I used to earn at Northgate Manufacturing. I branched into land, commercial properties, and private equity stakes. Within a few years, my fortune was larger than it had ever been during my marriage to Evelyn. But the numbers mattered less than the life they supported. Family dinners, weekend trips into the Pinecrest Range, evenings with Clara over a Scrabble board while Emma did homework at the kitchen table. Then, in the following years, the first sign from my old life appeared. Mr. Hanley, my lawyer in Brookford, called. "Daniel, your ex-wife is trying to track me down. She wants to renegotiate alimony. Sounds like she's in trouble." I asked about Nathan and Sophia. "Nathan says his business is failing. Sophia's fashion store closed last year. She's asking for financial advice." A slow smile spread across my face. "Tell them Daniel Cross doesn't wish to be contacted. If they push, you have my permission to take whatever legal steps are needed to protect my privacy." Hanley hesitated. "They sound desperate." "I know," I replied calmly. "That's exactly how I intended it." From that point forward, I treated their downfall like a symphony I had composed. And now I was simply watching it play out. Hanley became my eyes and ears, reporting each new note. One winter morning he called again. "Daniel, Evelyn's situation is bad. That man she left you for, his name was Alan Reeves. Turns out he's a professional con artist. He convinced her to invest a significant sum of money from the divorce settlement, plus a sizable emergency fund. Then he disappeared. The business he pitched didn't even exist. Fake papers, a rented office, and Alan Reeves wasn't even his real name. Evelyn's living in a small apartment in Brookside now. Lost the Fairpoint house when she couldn't keep up with the mortgage without extra support from you." I leaned back, remembering how carefully I had set the stage. When I signed the divorce, my reported income was limited to my base salary. The rest was sheltered in trusts and entities the court didn't count as income. That meant her modest monthly alimony was far less than she had imagined. And the assets she received? They were the ones I knew wouldn't last. Northgate Manufacturing stock that I was certain would tank once upcoming problems went public. Within the first year, the value had dropped 60%. The safe funds I left in the split were high-risk investments dressed up to look stable, but ready to implode. "And your children?" Hanley asked. When I asked Mr. Hanley about Nathan, his voice grew more serious. "He sank almost everything from the divorce into a flashy cryptocurrency startup claiming it would change the way the world made digital payments. He even borrowed against his home and emptied his children's college fund. It turned out to be a Ponzi scheme. He's lost hundreds of thousands." I wasn't shocked. Nathan had always chased quick wins. As a boy, as a young man, and clearly now as a father. I'd tried to teach him that wealth grows from patience and discipline, not shortcuts. But he had always trusted gut feelings over solid analysis, and now his instinct had cost his family their stability. "And Sophia?" I asked. "She overexpanded her fashion store," Hanley replied. "Opened 2 more locations in the Harborview district without enough capital to keep them afloat. When the pandemic hit, the rent on 3 premium spaces bled her dry. She's buried under significant debt." That was Sophia's pattern. The finest, the most expensive, the image of success without the discipline behind it. I had funded her first store knowing full well she didn't yet have the grit for the retail business. She saw only the glamour, never the numbers that decide whether a store lives or dies. Hanley's tone shifted. "They're reaching out more aggressively now. Evelyn called my office multiple times in a week. Nathan sent a letter several pages long pleading for your advice. Sophia has apologized and swears she'll never again be part of anything against you." The word "against" caught my ear. At last, they were admitting the retirement party had been orchestrated. Hanley continued, "Evelyn's considering personal bankruptcy. Nathan's on the verge of losing his house. Sophia's living with her mother in Brookside." I listened while sitting on the porch of our home, not the cabin I first moved into, but the 600-acre ranch I had bought the year before, with sweeping views of the Pinecrest Range. Down in the yard, Emma was showing Clara how to ride one of our horses, their laughter floating across the pasture. "Tell them again," I said quietly. "Daniel Cross does not wish to be contacted." Hanley hesitated. "What if they try to track you down? Evelyn mentioned hiring a private investigator." "They're welcome to try," I said, smiling. "They'll learn that Daniel Cross from Brookford, Westvale State, no longer exists in public records." And it was true. I had legally changed my residence, reorganized my businesses through a maze of corporate structures, and even adjusted certain civil record details, all perfectly legal, of course, but enough to make the trail go cold. Hanley tried once more. "But Daniel, they're your family." I looked out at Emma running toward the house, calling, "Daddy, look what I learned," and Clara waving from the porch. "My family is right here," I said. "The people in Brookford are just an expensive lesson in trust." It was time to close this chapter for good. One bright spring morning, several years later to the day after my retirement party, I made my decision. Clara was in the kitchen flipping pancakes. Emma's piano practice filled the living room with a classical piano piece she was preparing for a school recital. My phone rang. Hanley's voice was serious. "Daniel, Evelyn's in the hospital. Severe anxiety attack. She's being treated for depression and financial stress." I felt nothing. No anger, no pleasure, just emptiness where 30 years of shared life used to live. "Nathan called too," Hanley added. "He was crying. He wants 5 minutes with you. Says he needs help saving his family from bankruptcy." From the kitchen, Clara caught my eye and smiled. Emma waved at me from the music room. 5 years earlier, I had been nothing more than a man they saw as a walking bank account. Now I was a father, a husband, a mentor, and a partner in the truest sense. "Write them a letter," I told Hanley. "The same one for all 3. I dictated slowly. "Dear Evelyn, Nathan, and Sophia. The man you discarded years ago is gone. You misjudged me as a useless old retiree. You've now learned what that mistake cost. There will be no second chances, no reconciliation, and no financial rescue. Your choices were built on greed and convenience. Now live with them. Daniel Cross." "That's it?" Hanley asked. "No," I said. "Include a photo." That afternoon, Clara, Emma, and I stood in front of our stone and wood ranch house for a professional portrait. Behind us, the stables stood against the mountain backdrop. My high-end electric sedan rested in the driveway, next to the small plane we used for weekend trips to Lakeshore City. I wore jeans and a flannel, a far cry from my old corporate suits. On the back of the photo, I wrote in pen, "The Cross family, Clearwater State, built on love, not wealth." Back in Brookford, I would never have dressed in jeans for a portrait. Yet here I was, relaxed in flannel beside Clara, radiant in a simple summer dress. Emma stood proudly with our golden retriever Max, whom we'd adopted the year before. All three of us smiled in a way that wasn't forced. It came from the life we had built together. On the back of the photograph, in my own handwriting, I wrote, "The Cross family, Clearwater State, built on love, not wealth." 3 weeks later, Mr. Hanley called. "Daniel, your letter stirred things up. Evelyn tried calling my office 46 times in one day. Nathan sent me 12 pages. More confession than letter. Sophia? Well, she came to my office in person." "What did she say?" I asked. "She admitted you'd won. She said they finally understood it was never about the money. It was about respect and loyalty. She wanted me to tell you they're proud of the man you've become, but they know it's too late." "Proud," I repeated. "That's rich." Hanley went on. "Before she left, she asked if you were truly happy. I showed her the photo. She stared at it in silence for nearly 5 minutes, then said, 'He looks 20 years younger. I never saw him smile like that when he was with us.'" Sophia had always been the sharper of my 2 children. Perhaps she finally realized that the man she'd known in Brookford wasn't the real me, just a version shaped by decades of obligations that were never returned. "Daniel," Hanley asked, "do you take any satisfaction in their suffering?" I thought carefully. Satisfaction? No. Relief? Absolutely. I carried anger like a stone in my chest for years. Now it's gone. Not because they've fallen, but because I've built something better. "Would you ever reconsider?" he asked. "They're still your biological family." I shook my head, even though he couldn't see it. Family isn't decided by DNA. It's built every day through loyalty and love. Clara chooses me every morning. Emma chooses to call me Dad. I choose to protect and guide them. That's family. Evelyn, Nathan, and Sophia made their own choices too. To use me, to scheme against me, and to throw me away when they thought I had nothing left. Those choices don't build families. They destroy them. 6 months later, Hanley delivered his final report. Evelyn had moved into government-assisted housing. Nathan was working as an accountant for a small company in Westford, slowly rebuilding but far from his old lifestyle. Sophia, in her early 40s, had gone back to college to become a primary school educator. They had survived, and that was all I needed to know. Now, a couple of years later, I wake up in a home full of laughter and plans. Emma, in her mid-teens, is preparing university applications, earning a full merit scholarship through her own hard work. Clara has expanded her bookstore into 3 cities across Clearwater State and is considering writing a novel. As for me, in my late 60s, I'm happier than I thought possible. My fortune keeps growing, but its purpose has changed. No longer to impress or fund people who saw me as a resource, but to build something lasting with those who love me for who I am, not for what I own. Sometimes Clara asks if I ever miss my old life. I always answer the same way. You can't long for what was never truly yours. The betrayal from Evelyn, Nathan, and Sophia didn't just end a marriage and blood ties. It gave birth to the real Daniel Cross. I learned that the most powerful revenge isn't destroying those who wronged you, but creating a life so full of purpose and joy that they no longer matter. They taught me that love can't be bought, but it can be lost. That family is a privilege, not a right. And that sometimes the best answer to betrayal is not rage, but the quiet indifference of a life well lived.